Hello everyone, and welcome back to Teacher Talk Radio. I've got Lord Jim Knight here, who's just been speaking on a panel about all things education. So I thought we'd start with, which I've already asked you actually a few minutes ago, but the sort of, one of the panels was at Schools and Academy Show is fixed around the idea of education by 2030. What were the key takeaways from the panel that you've just sort of sat on there?
Well, in particular, it was focused on whether or not we get to every school as an academy in a strong trust, as was set out in the school's white paper 5 Secretaries of State ago, I think back in March. And the conclusion was it's probably really hard to get there, but that I think most of us think we've probably crossed a tipping point where it would actually just be helpful to go for that, and in doing so, for us to probably reimagine what we think a strong MAT, a strong multi-academy trust should look like, and also be clear about what we think the role of the local authorities should be. So, for example, in my view, school admissions should be the responsibility of the local authority, not just to administer it, but take away the admissions authority role from those MATs that have it, because there should be a level playing field, and the kids should go to the best school for them, and not have schools selecting kids. And there are things like that where if local authorities can be the people who are the honor champions of the children, especially the more disadvantaged children in the authority, and they're then placing them and getting them educated in the best schools, regardless of whether they're run or not, we start to move towards the sort of collaborative community level engagement and engagement with democracy that I think we need.
Obviously, you've got a background within sort of Labour politics and so on. And obviously, Tony Blair's big thing was education. Do you think, what's your thinking at the moment? We've had the budget, obviously, today. We've got lots of things happening in that regard. Do you think we as a country have lost sight of education?
I think we've taken, if you like, a wrong turn. Now, we have immediate massive funding problems.
Yeah.
But if I look across all of the departments, the only 2 departments that have enjoyed any significant real terms increases in the last 10, 12 years are health and the Home Office. Education's done pretty well and actually only falling behind by about 2 or 3%. Now that needs to be sorted. We need to resolve the funding problems that exist in our schools if it's going to be a priority, and particularly in some places within the system. You know, early years, we all know investment in early years reaps really strong dividend. We know that 6th forms and 16 funding has been catastrophically cut, and we need to think about that. We've got massive adult skills problems. You know, we can look across the whole of the education system and see some really big challenges that need to be addressed. And so I would like to see a Prime Minister, as Jim Callaghan did with his Ruskin speech, way back 50 years ago, as Tony Blair did in coming into power in 97, really show that they prioritise education, that they want to have a national debate around what education is for. Now, I'm of the view that our curriculum is out of date and needs refreshing. I think we need to develop the social, emotional, and an either or. And so the broad and balanced curriculum is a debate that I think we should have much more up front. Employers are really dissatisfied with what we've got at the moment. We need to address that. But that needs to happen because there is leadership from the top.
To quote David Blunkett's report, do you want to see less chalk and talk?
Yes, I think in pedagogic terms, but in a way, I think teachers want to. They don't want to do chalk and talk, but if the system, if OFSTED, what ministers want as expressed in their various levers and buttons they've got to press, is that they've got to do more standing at the front of the classroom and have kids sitting in rows. I'm not sure most teachers think that that's the right thing in every circumstance. We should trust the profession more, and it's not then for me to say about chalk and talk. Pedagogy, I think, should be in the hands of the professionals.
What do you think of the phrase knowledge-rich curriculum?
I am somewhat disappointed at the return of Nick Gibb and the knowledge-rich brigade. That's what I'm thinking about in terms of balance. Knowledge is really important. Skills are really important. Being equipped to care for yourself with a mindset to care for others and for the natural environment, those are really important. We have my 11-year-old at home. She's likely to be in work until somewhere close to the end of the century, by which time it's going to be a radically different world with blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Lots going on, lots of change. Is the planet going to be around then? I don't know. And we're not educating people to be the problem solvers, the curious kids, to help us solve those problems. I asked some 16, 17-year-olds recently for reasons to be cheerful. And the reasons to be cheerful are that they're going to be making the decision soon and fix the mess that my generation has created. And we have created a mess, but we need to educate them so that they can fix those problems by being more curious problem solvers than they are at the moment.
You mentioned earlier, just sort of swinging back on the issue of funding and education, and we talked already about education needing investment in different areas. Where do you think that money should come from? Where, because ultimately we can say, look, funding should increase in this and this and this. But where should that money come from? Because ultimately it's got to come from somewhere.
Well, in the end, it has to come from people taxes. That's how public services are funded. People
not according to Liz Truss, but yeah.
People and businesses pay tax, and that's what happens. There isn't, despite Liz Truss and quite there are no magic money trees around, and we have to have an honest conversation with the public about where priorities lie. Then the more sophisticated answer would be, okay, where is it being spent at the moment that you would spend it differently?
That's basically what I'm trying to ask.
That's a much, much harder question because there's a huge amount of need. I think we've got massive housing problems in this country, and I see very little resource being spent on that. I think we've got to move towards a green-led growth, and quite a different economy, and obviously the trite politicians' answer as to where we find the money is we find it through growth, and any politician of any colour will tell you that.
But isn't that what Liz Truss said they were going to do by reducing taxes?
Yeah, because she had an ideological idea that was proven to not work and has cost us £20 billion that now we're having to all pay more taxes to cover the cost of. That's really shocking. But I think there's a more sustainable model of growth, which is about investing in people and investing in green technology that can go some of the way, but I'm sure there may be some, at the moment, if you look within the Department of Education, we spend an awful lot of money on structures, on consultants, on bits of the system to
huge amounts of money
to help people academize and so on. I'm not sure that is money brilliantly spent. I'm not sure spending £43 million on Oak National Academy becoming an arm's length body is a great use of public money. I wasn't sure, in fact I know it wasn't a great idea to spend £120 million on the Festival of Brexit, which became branded Unboxed, which 250,000 people went to. That's a ridiculous use of public money. So there are some bits of money kicking around that we might be able to spend more wisely, but that's frankly somebody else's job right now.
The Department for Education with our new education secretary have sort of come out and said in the last few days that they would like school leaders and the education profession in general to think very carefully about going on strike. They have said that that they want the education sector to consider the issues around inflation next year, and by putting the wages up and so on, this would cause more inflation. What do you think of that sort of argument? Do you think do you support? Do you think teachers should go on strike next year?
Look, if I were a teacher, a school leader, a union member, looking at the situation at the moment, I think I probably would vote to strike. I'm currently the chair of a multi-academy trust with 28 schools. So what I'm saying is the right to strike is really important. The recruitment and retention issues within teachers are really problematic, and teacher salaries are not and non-teaching salaries are not keeping pace with high levels of inflation. So I think it's a really important issue as to how we resolve that. There is not much money in the system for schools to have to cover off the cost of a big pay increase without money coming from the Exchequer. I don't know what Jeremy Hunt has said, because I've been here around more money. I doubt if there is much more money to cover that, and that he will make an assumption in the Treasury's thinking of 2% for public sector pay. And, we have to resolve that. There's not an easy answer.
Yeah. I mean, do you think that within sort of the realm of, basically more teachers than ever, even 5 years ago when everyone was saying more teachers than ever are wanting to leave, I would think that just based on this, purely anecdotal, but the number of teachers that we as an organisation, Teachers Talk Radio, have saying to us, we're thinking of leaving, we're looking to leave, and obviously I think with COVID as well, with the sort of birth of more remote jobs and remote work, that becomes more attractive. The cost of commuting has gone up, all these other factors as well, on top of the sort of unresolved workload issues in many schools. Ultimately, what something radical needs to happen. So, do you think government are aware that at some point there is going to be a breaking point and there's not going to be enough teachers left?
Well, yes, they're being told enough, and they can see their own data. They'll be also looking at a reduction in pupil numbers coming through primary at the moment, and they're going, well, maybe we don't need as many primary school teachers, and that if some leave that end of the profession, that's not the end of the world. They'll see a bubble currently going through secondary schools of larger class sizes, and they'll be kind of anxious about whether or not that is sustainable, particularly in the shortage subjects. And that's where the problems really hit. If lots of maths teachers, English teachers, design and technology, you can look at a modern languages teacher, all decide to leave. I would imagine we already have quite a number of secondary schools without anyone with a maths degree, and that's problematic. And they need to be worried about that, and I imagine they are.
Yeah, absolutely. Final question now. One thing you would add to education in the UK, and one thing you would remove from it?
Great question. So at the moment, I am particularly interested in how we place schools much more strongly at the heart of their communities as community institutions. And for much of the time, all weekend, a lot of evenings, we've got these great resources empty. And right now, families could do on a Saturday with a place they can go to where they can get breakfast and lunch that's warm, where they can do family learning. Kids can do some more learning if they want to on a self-directed basis, perhaps with some tutoring, where you can have repair shop, you can have access to technology that they might not have at home. We can deal with space poverty and data poverty I would love to see more of that, and some liaison with local authorities to provide some very small amounts of funding to be able to allow schools to open, resolve their safeguarding issues attached to all of that, and really help communities define what they're there for.
What do you think to those that would say that's like the nanny state? There would be those who'd say it's the nanny state.
I would say, look at the evaluation of extended schools that we had towards the end of the Labour government under Blair and Brown, and see that it works really well. Look at what Matthew Moss School in Rochdale has done with D6, which is where that idea germinates from. Look at community schools in states. Look at what they're doing in Uttar Pradesh in India with a similar idea. Look at what they're doing in Denmark with a similar idea. This works really well. So I do that. And what would I take away? I would take away phonics screening tests. I would take away most of the testing that we do in schools. I would take away exams at 16. I would end the national curriculum at 14. Free up 14 to 19 as a phase that is much more coherent without that unnecessary interruption. So I think we can release a lot of money back into the system that we're currently spending with examination bodies and assessment.
What would you replace?
Yeah, because we used to have a school leaving age of 16. We don't anymore. It's probably quite helpful for university admissions, but we need to move schools away from being designed around the needs of universities and have them designed around the needs of children getting into a fulfilling life, and that includes universities. It also includes work. We need to explore all of that much better than we do 14 to 19, and then I like what the Times Education Commission did in talking about a British baccalaureate, and I think a rapid qualification at the end of that, all of that 14 to 19 phase, much as Mike Tomlinson talked about all of those years ago in 2005-6. That's in my head where we need to get to.
Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.